He said it so effortlessly. Assam needs it more than you. My father didn't even glance in my direction. His eyes stayed fixed on the paper, the will he had just signed, as though it were a business deal and not the quiet burial of what remained between us. I didn't protest. I didn't ask why my stepbrother, his new wife's perfect son, deserved the inheritance my mother and I had spent our lives building. I simply smiled. A small, controlled smile, the kind that conceals a storm behind calm eyes. He mistook my silence for surrender. He didn't realize it was the start of his downfall. I was 13 when his second wife, Nadia, entered our home. She was stunning, not with softness, but with sharp beauty, the kind that cuts. Her charm was a weapon, gleaming and deliberate. My father changed around her. The man who once lectured me about saving money began splurging on imported perfumes and tailored suits. And Assam, her son, quickly became the golden child, polished, polite, practiced in flattery, and wearing entitlement like a crown. I saw through it instantly, but my father didn't. He saw himself reflected in that boy. When my mother passed away, I thought grief might bring us closer. Instead, he remarried 6 months later. He called it healing. I called it what it was, replacement. The betrayal began subtly. First, the joint accounts were restructured. Then, his signature began appearing beside Nadia's on property documents. By the time I left for university, Assam had moved into my old room. I stayed quiet. When I graduated with honors, he didn't bother to attend. He just sent a message. Proud of you. Assam starting a business. Need some funds. We'll settle soon. He never did. 6 months ago, he invited me to his lawyer's office. Called a formality. Said he just needed to update the will. I remember every detail. The scent of leather chairs, the buzz of the ceiling fan, the cold glint of Nadia's diamond bracelet as she signed beside him. That's when he said it. Assam needs more than you. The words hit harder than any blow. I didn't cry. I simply watched the ink dry, the ink that erased me from my own family's legacy. That was the moment I understood. He hadn't taken my inheritance. He had given me something far greater, a reason. Revenge, when done properly, is a craft. It doesn't begin with fury. It begins with patience. First, I studied not just business law, but inheritance law. Every clause, every loophole, every fine print that could quietly unravel a will. Then, I started visiting his lawyer. Casually at first, a friendly check-in. Lawyers love to talk when they think no one's listening. By the third visit, I knew everything. When the will was signed, under what terms, and who had witnessed it. The next step was simple. I found one of the witnesses, my father's accountant. A decent man, loyal but underpaid. Everyone has a price. His was 200,000 rupees. Mine was truth. Over coffee, he told me what I needed to know. The signatures hadn't been made in the same room. A technical flaw, small enough to overlook, but big enough to invalidate the will completely. I didn't rush to court. That would have been too easy. I waited for the perfect moment. It came on the night of my father's grand announcement dinner, the one where he planned to publicly name Assam as his heir. The room shimmered with pretense. Nadia in silk, Assam glowing with smug pride, my father radiating a joy that wasn't his to claim. I arrived late, calm, dressed in black. When he lifted his glass for a toast, I stepped forward. Before we celebrate, I said evenly, there's something you should see. I placed a folder on the table. The room fell silent. Inside, court documents filed that very morning, contesting the will, an affidavit from the accountant, and a legal notice freezing all assets until investigation. My father's face went pale. Assam laughed nervously. This is absurd. Is it? I asked, voice steady. A will sign without both witnesses present is invalid. I checked. I studied. You didn't. The silence that followed was perfect. Then I looked at my father, really looked at him. The man who once taught me integrity now stood exposed, stripped of it entirely. For the record, I said quietly, I didn't do this for the money. I did it so you know what it feels like to lose what you thought was yours. And then I walked away. 2 months later, the court nullified the will. The estate was restored to its original division. Half mine, half his. But I didn't keep my share. I sold everything, the properties, the accounts, and donated most of it to the women's shelter my mother used to volunteer at. Money was never the point. Principle was. Last week, I saw him outside the courthouse. He looked smaller, older, a man who'd finally learned what loss feels like. He tried to speak, but I kept walking. He had taught me business. I had taught him consequence.